Did you?
What? I didn't know that.
Yes.
When did this happen?
This is around the same time.
Shut the. Can I cuss on it? No.
Yes.
Kind of, I think, took the stigma down a little bit.
Yep.
Because if everybody feels messed up and
Yes.
out of control, then it's more socially acceptable to go get therapy.
Exactly. I like how you said that because you're right. It's like, dang, everybody just talking about it. It's like, oh, yeah, everybody's stressed.
I saw a meme. It said, "We depressed," or whatever DJ Khaled said.
All right, so welcome to Couch Time with Kayla. Appreciate you tuning in thus far. This is actually the final episode of Couch Time with Kayla, and I thought, who best to bring than one of my favorite people, Shatai. And this is the third time we've gotten to do something like this. And usually on your platform, which at the end I'll have you plug yourself, so they can know where to find you. But yes, this session is really just about how to know when it's time to leave therapy. Because so far we've been talking about go to therapy, go to therapy, go to therapy. And often therapy doesn't have to be something you do the rest of your life, but something that can help the rest of your life. So I want to talk about how do you know when it's time to shift through that. So what I'll do before we get into it is just have Shatai just give me a little background about yourself, who you are, and all that.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me on
Yes.
Couch Time with Kayla. Well, first of all, no, I'm just playing. This is an amazing couch and an amazing space.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm Meetshita Joyner. I am a friend of Kayla's.
Yes.
I am a fellow therapist, a fellow African-American therapist in the same city. I also do a podcast, which I'll plug later.
I mean, you can plug now if you want, since you're already on it. Yeah.
Unashamed
We'll
and Unapologetic, the Mental Unhealth Podcast. And I love collabing with you anytime I get a chance.
Yeah.
I have you hop on because you have so many good gems to drop, and you're just a good vibe.
Thank you.
So I
Likewise.
appreciate you having me on.
Yes, thank you. And Shatai, you can't tell, is one of those therapists. Also is really laid back, chill, very fun. Because there's a lot of people that think therapy is we just sit here and kind of talk and just like, But there's elements of that. But it's also like very like chill, relaxed, happy. So hopefully they pick up on some of that as well.
Yeah, it isn't always just, so how do you feel about that?
Right.
That cliche question.
Right, the lean in, like, tell me more. Yes, which sometimes I catch myself doing that. Anyway, so tell us a little bit about, like, what did starting therapy feel like? Either for you or something you noticed your clients talking a lot about?
Okay, so I actually, I believe that all therapists should have a therapist. And like you said, doesn't necessarily mean you need a lifelong therapist forever. You have chapters of therapy that open and close and whatnot. I recently just started seeing a new therapist myself. My old therapist retired. I loved her dearly.
Yeah.
And so I went almost a year without therapy, and then I decided I wanted to hop back in. Just some transitional things in my life. And so perfect timing for the topic.
Yes.
Starting therapy as a client, I was super excited because I'm a therapist, so I'm a weirdo because I was like, yes, I know what I want to work on. Let's get it. Let's go.
Right.
But it's still a little nerve-wracking because you don't know what all you want to share and also how to go about it. Even as a therapist, I think that it is kind of a curse as a client, and I tell my therapist this as well, because it's like I have this insight on myself, and sometimes ignorance is bliss would be nice. Yeah. Because I go into therapy like doop 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 and now you tell me why. Right. So just kind of pinpointing what exactly is helpful. Right. But I am excited just to have that help from somebody who is not me, because even though we are, kind of the experts on ourselves, whether you're a therapist or not, that's kind of my viewpoint. Nobody knows you better than you. Facts. But having somebody outside of you to notice things that you don't is so helpful. So it's kind of like bittersweet. It's like I'm excited and I'm nervous. Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because as you were talking, something that came to my mind, I was like thinking, like, how did I feel when I started therapy?
I wasn't aware like how much the impact of stigma still impacts me as like a person. Mm-hmm. And so when I first like started therapy, like with each therapist that I started with, I still had that nervousness, like, okay, what might someone think if they see me come to therapy? Are they gonna think like, oh, I'm not that good of a therapist, stuff like that? Like, I should have my junk together. Yeah. Or like, should I be talking about these things? You know, like in the Black community, it's like, you don't talk about these things. And so it happened like when I was starting, like all of that like got re-triggered and activated in me. It's not so much like after like the first couple of sessions, but that will happen. Like even if you're like a strong mental health advocate. So.
Yes. Okay, that's such a good point, because that is, first of all, we are human. We're human, we're human, we're human. Therapists are human. Yes. If you see us on the streets, we're still human.
Yes.
I have heard, and this is kind of not about therapy, but with my own podcast, you know, and just, we're in, do you say where you're from on here?
Yeah.
Okay, we're in Des Moines, Iowa, small community. Everybody kind of knows everybody to some extent. And so I had somebody tell me, oh yeah, such and such heard that you had some kind of mental breakdown or whatever, and they made the comment of like, isn't she a therapist? And she's like going through that, like how can she be a therapist? And so at first I was like, oh, but then I was like, you know what, F that, I'm human. I mean, like whatever. Yeah. But yeah, so even in going to therapy, there's still that stigma that we have. Of, okay, is this therapist who knows that I'm a therapist going to, like, in the back of their mind, they'll never say to me, but are they going to be like, dang girl, how are you working with so much anxiety of your own?
Yes.
But that was quickly alleviated, because in therapy, I'm like, this is my time. I'm going to say what I need to say.
Right.
And so I straight up tell my therapist, like, I know if I could practice what I preached, if I had a penny every time I practiced what I preached, I'd be a billionaire. And I know that I shouldn't think this and do this, but I do. Right. And my therapist does a great job of being like, you're fine. You're human. It's okay. Yeah. And I appreciate that.
Absolutely. My therapist also does a really good job of treating me like a client. Like, I really feel like I'm a therapist in there. Even when I'm talking about therapist stuff, he just does a great job of trying to, like, separate that.
Yeah, because we don't want to, like, I want to be the client.
Yes.
I need it.
Yes. It's important to be able to do that, or else you never, like, will leave that. So thinking about going through therapy, like, what does, like, healing feel like? And, like, how do you know when you're starting to, like, heal?
Ooh, that is a good... That's a really good question, Kayla. Okay, how does it feel? And okay, I think in memes, because I'm a product of millennial.
Okay.
So there's a meme where it says what people think healing looks like, and it's like beautiful sunshine and enlightenment. Yes. And then it's like, but what it really looks like, and it's what's her name? Oh, girl from For Colored Girls.
Which one?
The one whose kids got dropped off.
Oh, Kimberly Elise.
With the ugly, it's basically the ugly cry with snot coming down and bags under the eyes. And truly, sometimes that's what healing feels like. Because healing is not just enlightenment. That's like the rainbow after the heal.
Yes.
Or like the results after the surgery. If you've ever gotten like a procedure done and then you have all these bruises and like, I'm thinking like somebody who got a nose job. They look like they literally like got ran over by a truck first, right? And then the healing is done, and then they're like, whatever nose they want, it comes out.
Yes, I love the imagery because I can see that. I think people can see that because you're right. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and people, I hear a lot of times in therapy, like with clients of mine, like, I know it has to feel worse before it feels better. That is not necessarily the case.
Right. And
like, not to get discouraged that like you're gonna go through like a treacherous, horrible experience before it gets better, but just to keep in mind that healing can be messy, because healing sometimes means realizing things and coming to terms with things that either one, we didn't realize were even issues to begin with, or things we weren't ready to acknowledge.
Exactly. And that's why you couldn't heal before, because you're constantly like avoiding that piece. It's like, oh no, I'm just gonna get through. And healing means you have to actually like go through.
Oof.
whatever that is.
One of my favorite quotes, I don't know who said it, but you cannot heal from something if you don't acknowledge that it hurts.
Yes.
And so sometimes the healing process is tearful and it is relieving at the same time.
Yeah.
Because we, as people, especially when you've experienced trauma, and like, you know, we can talk about trauma bonding and like holding on to our trauma, becoming accustomed to and comfortable. I say comfortable, we can be comfortable, that doesn't mean we enjoy it,
Right.
but it's familiar,
Right.
right? And so if something is familiar, it can be very uncomfortable to let go of it, no matter how much it hurts us.
Exactly.
And that part can be very hard, and being able to work through that and like realize that you have let some of that burden down is so, it feels so good.
Right.
You might not realize it until like later.
You really don't. Right? It's like I say, when you leave a situation, you're like, oh shit, look back. Wow, how did I get through that? What was that like?
Yeah.
And all of that.
So.
Yes. Okay. I'm glad you said that too, because often healing it's so small. Like it's a bunch of small moments that build up into like this large moment. And so like often like people be like, all of a sudden they come to therapy because they're dealing with something like by themselves. Like all the time you're dealing with it and you're alone. And then the next moment you know you're healing is because you're able to recognize you're coming in now. You're talking about like, yeah, I told this person about the stuff that was going on, and now you're just like naturally just doing it. You don't even recognize. Wait, hold up. You actually let somebody else carry that load with you in that moment. Wait, you actually recognize like how you were feeling in that moment, like just like little pieces, and that's how you know like you're healing. Oftentimes as therapists, I'm one that's like I'm gonna make everything a big deal. And so in those little moments, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's like it's something that can happen outside of someone's awareness, and it's like at the end of it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So from a therapist standpoint, it is so cool and so powerful to see in clients when they don't even realize the healing that they've done. So just kind of a quick example. I was working with somebody and we were doing some EMDR therapy, which if you're not familiar, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I have to think about it.
Like, you got it.
But and we were doing it for quite a while, and this person was very intelligent, very intellectual, but not so attached to their emotions, you know. And the thing that we were working on was just like self-worth. And feeling worthy. And you know, they would always come and they would sit in this seat, just kind of like this, looking off in the distance, not really looking at me. I have an ottoman that, you know, is in the office that some people use it, some people don't, whatever. It's there for them. So all of a sudden they come into my office for their regular session. They sit in this chair. They grab the ottoman, push it closer, they put their feet up, and they're going like this in session. And I'm just like, and then the tone of the things that they were talking about, same things that we've been talking about, totally different tone, totally different perspective, and they didn't even realize it. And I'm sitting here flabbergasted as heck. I'm like, what? Like for me, I had to like pause for a moment and like take it all in, like, wow, you are moving and behaving in a way that says I am worthy of just sitting comfortably in this space. And
love that.
Like it was huge.
Right.
And they didn't even realize it. I'm like, so how you feeling right now? Like what's been different in the week? They're like, I don't know. I've just been okay. I've been standing up for myself. They didn't even say it like that, but they just described the situation.
Right.
So it's so powerful to see that in other people.
Yes. I think that's probably what keeps us like doing therapy. I like just those moments. It's just like, wow, it's happening. And we recognize it. Sometimes therapists, we'd be like, is it happening? Are they feeling it? Because it's like such an internal process. And so I'm happy you got to experience that moment, because that's like what lights the flame.
It gave me chills in the moment. I was like, you all right today? You feeling good today? What's going on?
Yes. Oh, so, I love that. So thinking through like that, how do you know when either you're ready or when somebody's ready to discharge? I was like, this is always sometimes in my experience like an uncomfortable conversation to have with clients. Even sometimes even my therapist, I'm like, so how much more work do you think I got? Because it's like you want to have it's like great, so you can have for the rest of your life, but also like, what does it look like to not have a therapist? And there's still value in that too. So, no, here's some of your thoughts.
That is a good one. I think it's good to have conversations with your therapist and just have that open dialogue.
Yeah.
One thing that we do, as therapists, we create what are called treatment plans. So what are your specific goals as the client that you want to work on? And so every couple months or so, I have a conversation with the client, revisiting their goals and kind of seeing how I do it really informally.
Yeah.
But how do you feel you've been doing on this, and how do you feel you've been doing using different coping skills, or you said you wanted to meditate more, how's that going? You said you wanted to improve your communication in your relationship, what have you noticed different? Just have those conversations.
Right.
And seeing, okay, well, sometimes I straight up ask what would it look like for you to say, I don't need this therapy anymore? How would your life look?
Right.
And feel, and then kind of go from there. And also, because it does get to a point sometimes where both as the client and the therapist, they come every week and it's they just want to kind of chit chat.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Right.
And that's where I think sometimes as the therapist, but with the client as a team, we gotta gauge, okay, some people use this as an avoidance of what's going on. You're chit-chatting and but okay, I know there's something else that's really stressing you, and then they bring it up the last 10 minutes of session, of course. Or is this pretty consistent, you're holding true to the progress we've been talking about, and it's staying consistent.
Right.
So do you feel like you still need to work on these goals?
Right.
Do you feel like you still need to come to therapy every week? Do you want to try coming every other week?
Right.
That's what I typically do, is I'll taper off.
Yes.
I mostly start people off weekly, just because I don't know you. You don't know me. We're getting to know the whole therapeutic process. Money, insurance can play a part into that too sometimes.
That's true. Sometimes insurance thinks you're ready before you are.
Yes, that's a good point.
It's a whole nother. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Sometimes insurance says nope, no more.
Right.
Which that's gonna be a whole nother episode. But yeah, and then after we do every other week, then I'll kind of gauge again, okay, well, do you want to maybe try monthly check-ins and see how things are going? And anytime as needed, if you need to schedule extra or come in another time that month, you can always do so.
Right.
And then usually after a while, it's okay, well, how do you feel about discharging? And I always, if they feel ready, I always leave that door open, that just because you're discharging doesn't mean that life is perfect,
right?
That you can't ever come back if you need to, but maybe it means that these goals that you are needing to work on at this point in your life, you're doing it,
right?
Or that you have the tools to manage these obstacles on your own.
Yes.
And you have the supports in place to where you don't necessarily need to see me.
Yes, exactly. And so I like how you mentioned that, though, because I think sometimes, like you talked about earlier with healing, people think I'll leave therapy and things just don't bother me anymore, right? Life is just great. I'm happy. It's like those tampon commercials.
They're rowing boats and climbing mountains.
As we talk about the side effects, right? But in reality, that's not. That's still what it's like. It's oh, there's this bump that happens in my life. I feel it, I acknowledge it, I cope through it, and then I'm able to be okay. Or I can ask for more people, and I can kind of work through it. And so, because life, unfortunately, especially if you're from a marginalized group, life's going to keep happening.
Yes.
Right? And part of therapy isn't necessarily for you to just be numb to oppression and numb to life happening, but it's okay, what can I do now to get through it? And I like how you give clients permission, if it gets too intolerable, you can always come back.
Yeah. Always. And, I was going to say something, I forgot. I don't remember. Okay.
It'd be like that.
It do.
That's okay. So, although, discharge can feel I'm celebrating and it feels great, sometimes there's, mixed feelings about discharge. And so I'm curious to know, what are some thoughts you have about, those feelings that come up as you're getting closer to discharge?
So, so from a therapist perspective, I get really excited and happy for my clients just because of their progress.
Yes.
And the whole point of therapy, well, sometimes, is to be able to pass the baton to the client.
Right.
Like, from start to finish, I'm trying to figure out, how can I make it so you don't need me, so you can do all this by yourself. And so I'm proud. It's like graduation and like sending somebody off into the world. So it's also bittersweet. It's like, we've had this nice therapeutic relationship, and like, because by the time somebody gets closer to discharge, I feel like you look forward to this client, because like it's like they're taking over most of the session and kind of telling you what's going on, and you're like, this is great, this is awesome.
Yes.
So it's bittersweet. Sad to see them go, but happy to see them go.
Right.
From a client's perspective, I've only discharged from therapy officially twice. One time was just kind of like it was a scheduling thing, so it was like, I don't know that I was done. My chapter was just done for the time. But the second time, my therapist retired, so it wasn't like I was discharging from my issues. But like, she was out. Right. She was leaving. That was actually really sad for me as the client, because I was working with this therapist for like a year and a half.
Yeah, that's a long time too.
And it was really sad. It was bittersweet. I was happy for her for retiring, and she was real helpful to me.
Right.
And I remember our very last session, I cried. But it was nice. She told me, she was like proud of me, and like, you know, the progress I've made, and she gave some recommendations of other therapists who she thought would be a good fit for me. So that was helpful. But I was sad because I really liked her.
It is sad.
And, or like, you know, as a therapist, whatever. But I don't know.
I'm even sad right now. Like,
I know.
I'm getting sad. I'm like, the empathy.
She was cool, and it was like COVID. She was older, so I'm like, stay in the house.
Right. Don't you go outside.
Right. But no, so so I can't say that I've like had a situation personally where I've just like, therapy has reached its course, and I'm like, all right, cool, I got this.
Yes.
So I'm waiting on that moment to see how it feels for me.
Right. Yeah. So I've also only been officially discharged once. The other two I discharged myself. It's a whole nother topic. But that time I remember that I didn't have them for a really long time. But I remember kind of being in this mix of like, I kind of feel ready. I'm like curious to see like how I'm gonna do. You know, see, can I do this? And I was like, you know, I kind of gonna miss like just talking with you, right, and all of that. But with my current therapist, who I've been with, oh my gosh, also now for like a year and a half, and we're still working together. But we had that moment almost where I'm just like, I think I might discharge, and I got like sad, and it was like a sadness because it's like, you've seen me in so many different entities and spaces that I personally have not allowed people to see me in. And I know I've grown, and I've grown from my work with you. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, you've really been such an integral part of my life. And I think sometimes people think like, you know, it's just a therapist, they're doing their job. And I'm the same. It's like, this is a part of our job, but also you're building like relationship is key to the process. And so I've invested trust, emotions, like I've invested my tears, you know, in these sessions, my rage, and like experienced that growth. And now it's not like therapy is not like, I'm gonna just say goodbye, I'll see you later. Like, it's different. Like parents, okay, I'll maybe see you during Thanksgiving or Christmas. It's like, I may or may not ever see you again,
ever.
And that's like a sad process. And I do feel like sometimes that's what keeps people from leaving their therapist. Is like, when you're ready. Without getting, like I said, that's a whole nother, we can talk about it, but often it's like that aspect, and there is that preparation. That's why, like you said, you kind of like taper off, because sometimes like that's why you need that. It's gonna maybe like once a month, see, like after that once every 3 months, because it like, that's a sever of attachment. And sometimes that, if you have a lot of attachment, if you had trauma with that, that can like reenact a lot of stuff. And so if you are noticing like you're feeling sad and it's like hurting, to be open with that, because maybe there needs to be an adjustment in what the discharge looks like instead of kind of like that one-off.
Yeah. So. And that's a really, really good point that you bring up too, is that as the client, if you have feelings of like discharges coming up and you feel kind of like devastated or like just more than that, like bittersweet, like, talk to your therapist about that, because that might be a sign that one, maybe there's more work to be done.
Right.
Not that like not that you need to have this like attachment to your therapist, but that might mean that you personally might have some more work in your own attachment trauma that you have realized.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, that's that space to just be open with your therapist about and kind of explore that.
Right, because that probably will show up in relationships. It's like, okay, I'm not doing well with this. Like, maybe I've worked through all these things. It's probably something life-changing or some event brings us to therapy. Like you said earlier, like all of a sudden, all this other stuff comes up, and we're complex people. So it might just be time, okay, I'm going to discharge from this treatment plan. Maybe I need another treatment plan, and maybe that just means, okay, maybe before I was being seen weekly, now this treatment plan, I think I'm managing it well enough, so maybe I need to be seen like bi-weekly or every 3 weeks working on this goal.
Yes.
And given permission to like navigate that and discuss it with the therapist.
Exactly, because therapy can be a wide range of things. You can achieve certain goals. You can be like, okay, I processed this childhood trauma and I can manage that. Now I kind of need to work on like how to manage a relationship now that I've healed from this. Yes. Now I need to learn how to be in a healthy relationship because now I'm healthier.
Right, exactly. You're a whole new person, truly. So
another thing that came to mind also is that sometimes your therapy journey can end without you completing your goals. And that's okay, because therapy is what you are needing in the moment and what you are ready for in the moment.
I'm so happy.
So because it shouldn't be forced.
Yes.
And sometimes we're not even at that like capacity of awareness to even go there yet.
Yeah.
So some indicators too, because I'm thinking back to my other discharge, not the recent one, but when I was just like done with therapy, scheduling and all that was factors. If it gets to a point where you just like don't even care to go, or like canceling is like, I'd rather go hang out with my friends, or like I'd rather like pick up an extra shift at work, or like you just really don't care to go, that could be an indicator that maybe it's time to discharge. Well, I really encourage anybody to talk to your therapist about this. Me personally, I tell my clients, I will not get offended. This is a perfect opportunity and a safe space for you to let me know how you're feeling. If you're like, I don't even want to come back anymore, or maybe I don't feel like you're the fit for me. We don't get offended. It's nothing personal. So if that's how you're feeling, let's talk about it. Rather than ghosting the therapist, or I mean, to each his own. It's okay. We don't get offended by that either. If you're gonna ghost your therapist, find another therapist that's a better fit. You know what I mean? But hopefully feeling comfortable in talking to your therapist.
And it's okay to send a message saying, hey, I'm not going to be at this appointment, and I'll let you know if I want future ones.
Yes.
Right. So that way they can like reschedule that if they need that space, because that's always a big piece in the field. But yeah, just say, or you can sometimes, if you feel comfortable, calling if they have a main office and telling whoever's at the front office, like, hey, I'd like to cancel my appointment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just go from there.
Yeah, indefinitely. I'll call you if I want to schedule again.
Yeah. Yes.
That's perfectly fine, because it's what you're needing.
And we'll respect that. We're not going to blow your phone up.
No, not at all. There was a moment in my therapy just recently where I was having like a rough day, and I was like, oh, I don't even know if I want to. It was like the day before my session. I was like, I don't even know if I have the energy to go to therapy tomorrow and talk about this. Maybe I need to skip a week. But I went. I did not skip, which I'm glad I didn't, because it was what I was needing. So.
And that's always something that I notice the same. So I do a lot of stuff about attachment style, which we'll have to talk about later. I'll probably want to do some videos on attachment style, but there are moments where I recognize, I was like, I'm getting too close to my therapist. And for me, that's like always like a big trigger. You're like, oh no, we're getting way too close, all of this. And I started thinking, I don't know if I want to go and talk. I don't know if I want to do this. And that's when I was like, oh, I definitely need to, because that's a pattern. for me. And so recognizing that, if that's like, ooh, something like, what is happening that's making me not want to go? And I have to do like that internal work and say, I think it's because I feel like I've been here too long. Where's that come from? What is happening there? And that's just okay.
Yeah.
We have to have that. So sometimes the thought of like discharge or not wanting to go, all of that can open the door of what healing, when we talked about healing, like some of that is that piece. Is can I allow this person to actually help me more instead of me wanting to think I just got it?
Yes. Because a lot of times people do leave therapy and with meds. Once they start to feel good, all right, I'm cool, I don't need this anymore. But it's like, okay, you're starting to feel good because you're starting to slowly work on these things. Right. Just like with exercise, you don't just go for the 6-week challenge and you're like, I feel great, I lost 6 inches, I don't need to diet or exercise ever again. I got this. And then you're like, ah, shit, I'm back to drinking McFlurry smoothies or whatever every day. And like, okay, there's maintenance to it. Like, you gotta keep up with it.
Exactly. And that's why a lot of the process, like towards discharge, are what do we do if you start to feel these feelings again, right? So that way you can handle it. But yes, so thinking through that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are on both ends. They're like, all right, I struggle with starting therapy, and I struggle with like knowing how to end or when to end. And so, what might you say to those people that are on either one of those spectrums?
If you even have, if you even have the thought that you want to go to therapy, go. Don't second guess it, because that is you know, your intuition, your gut feeling saying, I need help with something, whether it is something that you know or don't. So if the thought comes to mind, look into it and just go. And as far as ending, talk about it. Talk about it with your therapist. Just straight up ask, how do I know when I'm done being in therapy? And see what that conversation looks like. It's totally different for everybody. But just go and then just ask. Right,
absolutely. Just like jumping off the diving board, if you've ever done that, swimming, you eventually just got to do it and figure out what happens. And lean into that fear. You know, like, why am I afraid to start? Why am I afraid to end? Often it's like things won't go well, right? I'm going to start and then I'm going to fall apart. Is what we hear a lot. Or I'm going to end and I'm going to fall apart. And just being open to kind of talk through that.
Yeah.
So, yes. Well, Shatai, I am so happy that you joined us for this episode. The last episode of Couch Time with Kayla series of like, what is therapy like? And like I said earlier, I want to give you the opportunity to plug yourself so they know like where to find you, because you're very active on social media. You're very active in the community. So yeah, so let them know like where they can find you.
Well, thanks again so much. The time flew by. We need to invite me back again. I'll be here now. Yeah. But no, this was a pleasure.
Yes.
So you can find me. I'm on Instagram, unashamed_ and unapologetic. On any streaming platform where you can listen to the podcast, it's unashamed and unapologetic with the and sign. And just, subscribe, listen. Also on Facebook, Unashamed and Unapologetic, the Mental Unhealth Podcast. And
since you talked about it, since you got some of your stuff here, so that way you can see it.
Yes.
There we go. Yes. Thank you. You do a lot of stuff on mental health advocacy, domestic violence awareness, all kinds of things, sexual assault, just different aspects of people, sexuality and health. So yes, very good site to follow. Because you're doing big things out here.
Thank you. There's no shame. Unashamed, unapologetic. Let's talk about anything. Anything that you need to talk about, we're here for it. And normalizing it, right? Because all of this stuff that we're too ashamed to talk about, or that, people are going to think we're crazy or whatever. It's not. We're not crazy. We're just human.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a guest appearance on one of her episodes too.
Yes, you have to check out her episode. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yes.
So quite a couple of them. So
you're right. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in, and hope you enjoy the series.
And I can get on a whole pro-black rant, but this ain't the time nor the place. But I truly believe that as a people, as a black people, our potential is so like wildly large. That's why historically, since like the beginning of time, they have tried to like keep us down. Because like look at all the oppression that we go through, all the generational trauma and systematic oppression and how much we thrive
Mm-hmm.
regardless.
Yeah.
So imagine if that was not there in place,
Mm-hmm.
we would like conquer the fucking world. And I think
Absolutely.
that's what they know, and that is like since like BC times they've
Yeah.
been trying to keep us little.
Right, exactly.
But rant over.